Breaking tonight, major signs of progress, thank God, in the fight against COVID-19. The president's bold actions, they are working tonight. And what the mob and the media will never tell you is this. The Chinese, European travel bans, the quarantines, they saved this country, your fellow countrymen and women, untold amounts of suffering, massive quantities of federal supplies. Every state is getting everything that they need in record time. Thousands of ventilators have been distributed, and we have 10,000 still plus to spare if we need them. God forbid we do. Along with millions of N95 masks and millions more medical gowns and gloves and all the other necessary equipment. Every state in need, and most were not prepared. They should have been, but they weren't. The federal government has helped at the highest level in a medical mobilization that we have never seen before in history. And it has, we can report tonight, thankfully been a success on a lot of levels. Sure, we can always learn to do things better. A massive amount of federal aid has gone to New York, the epicenter of the disease. Remember, he sent the hospital ship, the Comfort. He ordered the Army Corps of Engineers to build numerous other emergency hospitals, a 3,000-bed facility, the largest in the country, at the Javits Center. And then they were both turned into COVID-19 patients where they would take those incoming. And both those hospitals were staffed with federal employees after being built by the Army Corps of Engineers, members of the military, stepping up as they always do, flawlessly. Over 20,000 hospital beds built in less than a month. And because of the president's orders, both the Navy Hospital, the emergency hospital, 3,000 beds at the Javits Center, started to accept COVID-19 patients. Thankfully, most of those beds have not been needed. And now we are seeing signs of serious improvement. April 2nd, the net change in hospitalizations was up over 1,400. But during the weekend, the cases dropped to under 100. And today, there were just 118 new cases. The numbers of critical care admissions are even better. The ICU patients decreased by 42. Death in New York has also declined now for the second day in a row. And remember, we kept saying if the patterns hold, you will see a leveling off and then a decline and then a precipitous decline. That will be the next step, we hope. Even Governor Andrew Cuomo admitting President Trump played a significant role in potentially flattening this curve to save lives. Take a look.
He has been good in delivering for New York. He has delivered for New York. The Army Corps of Engineers, we built thousands of beds. He sent the Navy ship Comfort to New York. He has delivered for New York. He has.
And staffed them. And all the ventilators they didn't buy, he put them in the state. Over 5,000 of them to start. And despite what you're now hearing from, well, some in the media and some other people, despite the hopeful facts on the ground, there is a level of fear, hysteria, panic among many on the left. This frantic anxiety, it doesn't have to do anything with coronavirus, everything to do with how well the administration has handled the national crisis. Today, during a powerful press conference, President Trump rightfully tore them to shreds. Take a look.
We did all of this work, but when you read the phony stories, nobody acknowledges this. And it doesn't have to be acknowledged from my standpoint, but it does have to be acknowledged from the great work that these doctors, nurses, the Army Corps of Engineers, FEMA, all these people, they've done this incredible job. And they shouldn't be abused. And I would love to be able to say that we have a very honest press. Honestly, John, there'd be nothing I would be more proud of if the press would work. And I don't mind being criticized, but not when they're wrong. Not when people have done a great job.
While President Trump was acting, protecting Americans from a future pandemic, Democrats obsessed with what? They were impeaching the president. The mob and the media cheering on their Democratic colleagues every step of the way. It is clear the media mob is full of liars. They have smeared, slandered, besmirched this president from the day he came down that escalator at Trump Tower with Melania Trump. They are propaganda outlets. They are state-run TV for the radical Democratic Extreme Socialist Party. They spread endless lies, conspiracy theories, one hoax, one conspiracy theory after another. Then when they lie, they never admit they're wrong. They just move on to the next set of lies. They are hateful. This is a destructive force for the country. I've been saying it now for 3 years. They have contempt for the American people because they think they're smarter. They think they know better. Donald Trump's success is their failure. And by extension, if the president fails, well, clearly that's what they want. Do they care about the damage they're causing the country? Apparently not, and they continue to cause damage. It's clear they have always wanted to defeat Donald Trump. 2016, what did they do? They helped Hillary as much as they could, ignoring her clear violation of the Espionage Act. Oh, yeah, the bleach bit and the deleted emails. Yeah, they ignored her obstruction of justice. They ignored her unverifiable, now debunked, dirty Russian dossier used to spy on a candidate and later a president. They ignored the biggest abuse of power corruption scandal in our history. They advanced one lie after another lie after another lie after a conspiracy theory and lie. And now they are ignoring quid pro quo Joe's misconduct and covering for zero experience Hunter, the whole Ukraine. Oh, we're against quid pro quos, but not Joe. You're not getting the billion unless you fire the prosecutor investigating my zero experience son that's getting paid millions. It's clear. We understand. They hate Donald Trump. They hate Trump supporters. If you like Donald Trump, they hate you. They hate me. They hate a lot of us here on Fox. They hate Rush. They hate Mark Levin. They hate others. Now, the same bad actors that brought you Russia, 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 Ukraine, Ukraine, impeach, now they're still lying to the American people once again, claiming that the president somehow must be responsible for COVID-19. Especially true of the New York Times, which has so much blind psychotic rage, they don't even fully comprehend. Forgive them, I guess. They know not what they do at this point in themselves. We are now breaking down some of their greatest errors tonight. For example, that garbage of a newspaper just published a hit piece, quote, "He could have seen what was coming behind Trump's failure on the virus." Okay, before the New York Times tries to rewrite their history, let's remember, China didn't publicly identify. We did not, as a world, know about coronavirus till January 7th when it first got a name. The first case of coronavirus in the United States was January 21st, days later, 10 days later, after the first case. January 31st, the president implemented the travel ban, then mandatory quarantines, and then subsequent travel bans, declaring a public health emergency. Trump haters everywhere, they said he was overreacting. They said he was racist. Biden said he was acting out of hysterical xenophobia and fear-mongering. February 5th, oh yeah, that newspaper, the New York Times, their headline, "Who says it's not safe to travel to China?" Oh, great advice for your readers, adding that the coronavirus travel ban is unjust. It doesn't work anyway. Well, it worked. At this time, even the country's top specialists weren't predicting a widespread national crisis. Now, for example, there's no better, more renowned, more respected doctor on the issue of pandemic. A man that has spent his entire life saving lives, coming up with treatment. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the country's leading infectious disease expert. He has dedicated his life to fighting infectious diseases and saving lives. He has served under 6 U.S. presidents. This is his life's calling and his life work. Perhaps no one in the world knows more about infectious diseases than Dr. Fauci. What I'm about to show you, this is not an attack on Dr. Fauci. Number one, China lied to the world. Number two, this is about context. Start on January 20th. At the time, Dr. Fauci, he wasn't sure the disease would spread from person to person. By the way, nobody knew. January 21st, Fauci said COVID-19 was not a major threat to the people of the U.S. The 2030 said that there's no chance in the world that the U.S. could shut down a major city like New York or San Francisco. The 26th, he re-emphasized coronavirus isn't something Americans need to worry about. January 31st, the day the president enacted the travel ban, well, he said we still have a low risk to the American people. February 17th, he called the risk minuscule. As late as March 9th, Dr. Fauci said, healthy Americans, generally healthy, you can go on a cruise ship if you're healthy. Not an attack on Dr. Fauci. He was making determinations based on facts as they were unfolding in real time, doing his best, as everyone else was. But it does shed a bright light on the president's decision early on to be called racist, xenophobic, fearmonger, etc., to put the travel ban into effect. In fact, as Dr. Fauci clarified today, President Trump used Dr. Fauci's expertise and Dr. Birx's expertise as to important tools to make critical decisions every single step of the way. They corroborated. They worked together in the interest of the American people. Was it perfect science? Nope. These things never are they? Take a look.
The first and only time that Dr. Birx and I went in and formally made a recommendation to the president to actually have a, quote, shutdown in the sense of not really shutdown, but to really have strong mitigation. We discussed it. Obviously, there would be concern by some that, in fact, that might have some negative consequences. Nonetheless, the president listened to the recommendation and went to the mitigation.
The president relied on the experts, but even in spite of it, nobody really thought the travel ban was needed at that time, and he was widely criticized. And his own observations about what was happening in China, his own gut instinct, the president had the foresight, the courage, the wisdom to do something no other president has done. Hadn't had a quarantine in over 50 years in this country. The travel ban, quarantines, public-private partnerships, rewriting all the books on how we deal with pandemics. Right before our eyes, we are witnessing a paradigm shift. It is saving untold American lives. It has prevented untold tens of thousands of other Americans from contracting the disease, extrapolating out from there, saving American lives. The media mob, they continue to lie. Now, look, nobody's doubting there's still important work to be done. We've got to stay focused on not only beating the disease, but also figuring out a way to reopen the economy. We can't go on like this forever. Not enough money. You can't print your way out of this mess. Now, this will be especially tricky in those high-density population areas. For example, it's going to be a lot more challenging in New York City than any other place. My position, okay, if half the workforce, if you have, for example, essential, non-essential personnel, many Americans, it will be a new normal now for people to work from home in numbers never before seen. People going into work, they might have their temperature taken. They might even have to get a COVID-19 test. Social distancing will be a part of less crowded office space. All of that, gloves, masks, for the time being, there is a disruption in everybody's life. Now, keep in mind, our economy, it never fully closed. Truckers were working, farmers were working, grocers were working, manufacturers of medical equipment and ventilators, they were all working harder to keep the country safe, to take care of our first responders in hospitals all across the country. Their safety, their well-being, so critically important, but so too are our inalienable rights. As we go towards reopening business in the country, we can't deny civil liberties, constitutional rights. People have a right to medical privacy. You can't be tracking Americans as they travel. We can't have nationwide databases with America's personal health information on it. I don't trust any of them in Washington in the swamp. The constitutional infringements coming from some state, local governments, this has to stop. In Greensville, Mississippi, for example, people ticketed $500 for attending a drive-through church service. Drive-through. Socially distant church service. One California town issuing an order mandating residents wear masks whenever they leave their homes. We have one guy in Pennsylvania ripped off a bus because he didn't have a mask on by 10 cops. Michigan's governor banning all gatherings of any size, including residents' own homes. Also banning the purchase of seeds and plants and certain types of fishing. Why? Governor Huckabee rightly stating that that would shred the Constitution.